On July 7, 2016, gunshots erupted during a peaceful protest against police brutality. While crowds scattered in every direction, members of the Dallas Police Department answered the call of duty to serve and protect, and ultimately 5 officers paid the ultimate price. This is the story of the Dallas Police Massacre. Micah Xavier Johnson was born in McGee, Mississippi, and was raised in Mesquite, Texas, a city located just east of Dallas. He finished high school with a 1.98 GPA, ranking 430th out of 453 students in his graduating class. Immediately after high school, he joined the United States Army Reserves. Johnson served from March of 2009 until April of 2015, completing one tour in Afghanistan from November 2013 until July of 2014. Johnson would ultimately receive an honorable discharge, and that's where the questions start to surface. You see, Johnson's military career wasn't exactly spotless. In May of 2014, Johnson was accused of sexual harassment by a female soldier, Sergeant Anna Christine Ma. On top of the sexual harassment allegations, Sergeant Ma also sought out a protective order. Johnson and Ma had maintained a 5-year friendship, but it was marred by disagreements and fights. On May 1st, 2014, Ma noticed that there were some undergarments missing from her laundry bag. Upon a health and welfare inspection, 1 pair was found in Johnson's quarters, and inside Johnson's pockets, 3 more. Upon confrontation, Johnson fled and tried to dispose of them in a nearby dumpster. His excuse? He stated that a civilian acquaintance gave them to him, but Ma ultimately confirmed that they were actually hers. Sergeant Ma further stated that prior to May 1st, Johnson had actually asked her directly for a pair of her underwear, and even at one point started making jokes, making light of sexual assault. On top of that, it was discovered that there was an incident where Johnson and Ma had gotten into a disagreement, and Johnson responded by punching through a car window, severing an artery in the process. Johnson was disarmed under the recommendation of his platoon sergeant, who stated that Johnson posed a real threat to those around him. He was then placed under 24-hour escort before suddenly being moved on May 3rd to Bagram Airfield. While soldiers were packing Johnson's personal items and clearing out his quarters, they found a few interesting items, namely a 40mm grenade, a .50 caliber round, and prescription medication that actually was for another soldier. After being sent back to the US, the Army initiated proceedings to give Johnson an other than honorable discharge. On the advice of his attorney, Johnson waived his right to a hearing. In exchange, he would receive a general discharge under honorable conditions. In September of that same year, Johnson was finally discharged, but due to a clerical error, he actually received an honorable discharge. No longer active duty, Johnson would finish his remaining obligation as a reserve. VA records released after the fact showed that Johnson showed signs of PTSD after returning back from Afghanistan. The records further stated that he had sought treatment for anxiety, depression, and hallucinations. While Johnson had no criminal history, police records show at least 2 encounters with Johnson. Both of those records show that Johnson exhibited signs of mental disturbance, but ultimately posed no threat to himself or others. A dive into Johnson's online presence and activity gave investigators a little bit of insight into Johnson. The specific insight that they were hoping for was a reason why he would ultimately carry out the deadliest act against law enforcement since September 11th, 2001. Johnson showed interest in black nationalist groups in person and online, and he really wasn't shy to share those radical views. Views so radical that, in fact, Johnson was asked to leave the Houston chapter of the new Black Panther Party. Leaders of that chapter specifically stated that he was ousted for espousing dangerous rhetoric such as pressing for the stockpiling of weapons and ammunition, and even calls to violence against religious figures that Johnson felt were damaging to the black nationalist movement. People close to Johnson stated that he was very affected by the recent rash of police shootings against black men. Johnson would repeatedly watch the 1991 footage of the Rodney King beating, and even expressed a desire to partake in targeted violence towards police officers. Dallas Police Chief David Brown summarized the motive in a press conference.
The suspect said he was upset about Black Lives Matter. He said he was upset about the recent police shootings. The suspect said he was upset at white people. The suspect stated he wanted to kill white people, especially white officers.
And so, on July 7, 2016, Micah Xavier Johnson prepared himself and set way towards downtown Dallas. Demonstrators were marching peacefully through the street, the sun was settling into the horizon, and then,
just as darkness falls, you can see the moment when one protester realizes something had gone terribly wrong.
Shortly before 9 p.m., Johnson parked his mother's black Chevrolet Tahoe in front of the Centro College in downtown Dallas. He put on his tan body armor, chambered around into the rifle, and hit the hazard lights as he exited his vehicle. He worked his way towards the intersection, and as demonstrators worked their way down Main Street, Johnson took his rifle, shouldered it, took aim at a group of police officers, and opened fire. By the end of his first volley of shots, Johnson had claimed his first victims: Senior Corporal Lauren Aarons, Officer Michael Kroll, Officer Patrick Zamaripa. They had no chance to defend themselves. Johnson doubled back towards the Tahoe and then tried to make his way through the main entrance of Centro College. He shot through the glass doors but was unable to make entry. However, in the process, 2 officers were injured: Officer John Abbott, Corporal Brian Shaw. Johnson continued north where he saw and ambushed Officer Brent Thompson. Johnson utilized his military training, and while Thompson was actually a Marine, he was outgunned and outmaneuvered. Thompson was killed as he peered around a corner. Johnson continued to work his way around the building and ultimately shot through a separate entrance off Elm Street. He was now inside the building. At some point, Johnson sustained an injury, leaving a trail of blood everywhere that he went. Officers would use this trail to help identify where in the building Johnson actually was. Corporal Shaw, despite having suffered serious injuries, continued to follow Johnson. Shaw tailed him into a stairwell, where Johnson ultimately opened fire on Shaw again. Shaw had to retreat, and Johnson continued working his way up the stairs. Navigating through the Centro library, Johnson headed towards the north side windows, facing towards Elm Street. He stopped and opened fire on officers that were arriving on the scene. It was here that Johnson struck and killed Sergeant Michael Smith as he was exiting his patrol vehicle at the 7-Eleven across the street. Beyond those windows that he shot out of was an alcove where Johnson would ultimately barricade himself in. Over the next hour, Johnson and law enforcement would continue to exchange gunfire sporadically. After assessing the situation, it was deemed that it was essentially impossible to move on to Johnson's position without being in direct line of fire and seriously risking more officer lives. The standoff would ultimately end when Chief Brown ordered 2 officers to rig a robot with C4 explosive that could be detonated remotely. The city of Dallas's remote-controlled bomb disposal vehicle, a Remotech Andros Mark VA-1, was fitted with 1 pound of C4 and sent on its final mission. The robot approached Johnson's position, and as soon as line of sight was made, Johnson was immediately killed in the blast. Next to his body was an Izhmash Saiga, an AK-47 variant, and at least 1 confirmed handgun, a Glock 19 with high-capacity magazines. On his body was the ballistic armor and armor plating that he had put on just a few hours before. The aftermath of Johnson's attacks spread far and wide. Federal investigations from across the board were immediately underway. Civil lawsuits were filed en masse. Discussions and criticisms over DPD's use of a robot to inflict lethal force on a citizen, and racial tensions, which were already high, peaked even further. It's hard to really make sense of what happened that night. That's because It doesn't make sense. All the loved ones of those who had passed, all of them were left drowning in shock and sorrow. Micah Johnson's actions in just 2 words were unequivocally reprehensible, and they remain reprehensible throughout any kind of circumstance he was in or any kind of slight that he may have felt throughout his life. His parting gift to a society that he wanted to do nothing more than harm and further divide, a wake of blood, tears, and confusion. I've been a true crime addict for as long as I can remember, and as macabre as this may sound, I really enjoy being able to tell these stories in my own little way. Oh, and I should mention that since I live close to the location of this incident, I actually took a little trip to downtown Dallas to get a first-hand view, first-hand perspective of the location, to see what transpired. I did film that entire trip. It's actually a separate video if you want to see that down below, but I take you step by step chronologically through the events that we discussed in this video. I'd highly recommend anybody that's intrigued by this case to take a look at that video, because seeing how close everything was in proximity to each other is really bone-chilling. But again, link is down in the description below. And you know, with that said, I think we're done here. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. If you hated it, thumbs down. Let me know what you thought. Comments, suggestions, feedback. I love it all. If you'd like to see some more of these stories, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn the bell on. Oh, and I didn't mention this, but the video that I made that's actually on location over there in downtown Dallas, that was actually streamed live on Twitch. So if you guys want to see some stuff that happens before it comes out on the channel, come check me out at twitch.tv/beesonmyheadtv. Link down in the description below as well. I think that's it. Thank you for watching. I'll see y'all next time.